Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Richard and welcome back to a weekly Watchlist video sponsored by MarketSmith. And before we get into my focus list and talk about both the technicals and fundamentals of all the stocks on my radar, let me know down below in the comment section one stock you're watching for next week, and also go ahead and leave a like down below on this video. It really helps me out and my channel. And of course, subscribe if you want to see more videos just like this one every single week. So diving into this list, there are 14 stocks on my radar, and let's go ahead and start off the video with ABNB. So overall, this did report earnings on Thursday night and had a bullish outside day in response to that on Friday, basically finishing at the high of the day and the week. And I'll be watching very carefully to see how it acts versus this 157.41 pivots, or if it forms an inside day, tight consolidation and moves upwards, you could manage risk right at this swing low and buy it on strength. So in terms of fundamentals, you can see fantastic sales growth this most recent quarter, and they guided higher as well. You can see the estimate revisions for annual EPS for 2021 and 2022 is up. And overall, looking at the fund ownership, let's go ahead and bring that out as well. You can see that we have a nice increasing trend, a whole bunch of funds already in the stock, and 4 high quality funds, which just shows there's a lot of conviction in this name, and we have had a decent consolidation now, and we'll see if we can start to move up the right-hand side of this institutional due diligence phase and start to trend towards 220. Moving on, we've got Coinbase, and you can see that this also reported earnings on this day right here. The next day we had an attempt at a move up, and this actually hit the anchored VWAP from this IPO day, if you draw that in TC2000 or TradingView. And then we had a pretty poor close, and you can see we fall through to the downside. However, this Friday was a little bit of an expectation breaker, this inside day, because from these two bars, the expectation is we just kind of fall back into this base, but instead we're holding pretty close to the 261.15 pivot here, and I'm watching for an inside day and up early next week, or for just some tight days showing that the sellers have kind of exhausted themselves, and then a break higher, managing risk at that swing low. And in terms of the fundamentals, you can see fantastic earnings, sales, margins growth. Great estimates for this year, not so much for next year, but really the only thing I can compare these growth numbers to is Zoom of last year, and we'll see if this follows a similar chart pattern to Zoom. Now looking at the fund ownership, you can see a big jump from 0 to 246, and 2 high quality funds already establishing positions. So we'll see how this acts, and if it manages to find support near this pivot and start to trend higher. An immediate move up would be a little bit dramatic. But I think more likely we get some type of consolidation, maybe an undercut reclaim chopping around near this pivot, and then potentially a move up. And I'll be watching to see if I can buy it on strength or on an oops reversal, some type of weakness entry. Now it is within the character of the stock to kind of have these gap downs, gap ups for 2 days in a row, and then kind of reverse. So I'll be watching very carefully if we continue to do that sometime next week. Next up, we've got DoorDash, and similar to ABNB, we had a bullish outside day on this Friday after reporting earnings, and you could have bought this through the oops reversal or through this high as it completed the outside day. And overall good volume here, and I want to see some fall through to the upside through 200, and we'll see if it can complete this kind of large cut base here and maybe form a handle after it nears the 226.47 pivot. Overall, looking at the fundamentals, you can see it has nice sales growth. It's not yet profitable, and sales growth is slowing down a little bit, although it's still plus 83%. And you can see it's not supposed to be profitable within the next 2 years. And unfortunately, estimate revisions are down. Looking at the fund ownership, you can see there's already quite a bit of funds in the stock, and Fidelity Contra Fund has a position. Moving on, we've got EXPI, which had a strong earnings gap up with a good closing range on the highest volume ever. And so far it's drifted higher, but I'm waiting to see if it can kind of tighten up here, maybe undercut and reclaim the structure, form a 2-2 reversal, and you could enter through this high or add on strength through this level as well. Overall, in terms of earnings, sales, margins, really strong numbers here. And you can see great estimates for this year and the next, and estimate revisions are up as well. Nice increase in fund ownership, but no high quality funds invested into the stock. And one knock against it for sure is the amount of overhead supply kind of waiting up here to sell into any strong moves up. So that is definitely one knock against it. If this earnings gap up was into new all-time highs, that would be much more bullish. So that is EXPI. Definitely want to keep an eye on here because this is the highest volume ever. Definitely a sign of institutional interest. Moving on, we've got KNBE. Overall, looking at the earnings sales margins, you can see it's off and on in terms of profitability, and is just supposed to be profitable this year and add a further 29% in terms of annual EPS next year, and the estimate revisions are up. You don't really have any fund ownership information just yet. This is a pretty recent stock. And look at the chart. This isn't the prettiest looking thing here. It had a nice move up the right-hand side here, a quick 85% move from the 20s to the high 30s, and then pulled back and gave everything back. But really what has drawn my interest here is we had the largest volume ever on this day with a strong closing range, and then a pretty nice inside day to end the week on Friday. So I'm watching for a strong push through the high volume close, or even through the IPO base pivot. So that is KNBE. And moving on, we've got NTLA, and you can see that this is a biotech name. Obviously not really any fundamental growth numbers, earnings, sales margins just yet. Not supposed to be profitable, but you do have increasing fund ownership and 4 high quality funds investing into this stock. And overall, this had a strong move up when there's a lot of news that CRISPR technology was making some advancements, and you had a really strong push, and then pretty much the formation of a base here, and now it's in a stage 3 cup with handle. The standard pivot is 178 flat, but I'm watching for a 2-2 reversal, maybe a break of this DTL as an early entry, or an undercut and reclaim of the 150 level. But I like the volume here declining within this handle right here, and the volume on the gap up was absolutely enormous. So that is NTLA. And moving on, we've got PLTR, which also had a recent earnings gap up on pretty high volume. Great earnings sales margins the most recent 2 quarters. Great estimates, or not great estimates, but decent estimates for this year and the next, with estimate revisions being upwards. Nice increase in fund ownership, but no high quality funds invested into this stock just yet. And overall, you can see it had a nice earnings gap up, closed pretty much a little bit higher than mid-range, then a nice inside day with a good closing range on Friday. So I'm watching for a fall through this high, and the standard base pivot of this cup, which is a stage 1, is 27.5. But I'd be looking to add to my position right before this pivot if we do form some type of constructive base structure. Moving on, we've got POWI, another recent earnings gap up. Great earnings sales margins the most recent few quarters. Great estimates for this year, not so much for 2022, but estimate revisions are up, which is a good sign. A nice steady increase in fund ownership, and 1 high quality fund investing into the stock. As for the chart, it's moving out of a stage 2 consolidation right below this pivot and the 100 level. And I really like how it's just basically gone quiet and tight on no volume right after this very strong move on huge volume with a very good closing range. So I'm watching for a break of this DTL and a strong push through all these pivots at once and the 100 level. Moving on, we've got Roblox, which, as I said, reports earnings on this Monday. Great sales growth the most recent 4 quarters. So I'm watching for an earnings gap up on volume. And looking at the annual EPS, there's not much to talk about. The estimate revisions are down, unfortunately, but we'll see if guidance changes when it comes to the actual day that reports earnings. And you can see nice growth in fund ownership and 3 high quality funds in there as well. So I'm watching for a push through these pivots, or potentially if it sells off initially and then rallies strongly, I'll look for an intraday setup or an oops reversal or some type of alternate entry. So that is RBLX. And moving on, we've got Snap, another recent earnings gap up that's pretty much just gone sideways, frustrating a lot of people right near this pivot. And I'm watching for an undercut and reclaim of the 73.59 pivot, or a 2-2 reversal through Friday's high. And overall, you've got really nice earnings sales margins the most recent 4 quarters. Estimate revisions are up, and you've got a nice increase in fund ownership and 4 high quality funds invested into this name. SQ also had the largest volume ever recently and looks decent within the stage 1 consolidation, and really strong earnings sales margins the most recent 4 quarters. Great estimates for this year and the next, with estimate revisions being raised recently, and a nice increase in fund ownership and 5 high quality funds invested into this stock. So as for a chart, I like this day, the really strong closing range on huge volume, and these pullbacks are on pretty low volume overall. So I'm watching for some type of reversal, maybe use this DTL as an alternate entry, or an undercut and reclaim of the 21 EMA. So that is SQ. And moving on, we've got Team Atlassian. Overall, you can see some evidence of growth numbers down here, decent estimates for this year and the next, although not explosive. Nice increase in fund ownership and a whole bunch of high quality funds. And as for a chart, you can see it had a nice earnings gap up. One knock certainly against this is that this close right here was not great. It was not above 50% and ideally 70, 90%, but it has held this low right here, which is constructive. And so far just going sideways on declining volume. So I'm watching for push through these levels right here, or potentially an undercut and reclaim of this swing low at this point right here. So that is team. And moving on, we've got Tesla. And overall, you can see great earnings, sales, margins, great estimates for this year and the next. A nice increase in fund ownership and 3 high quality funds. And I'm watching to see how it acts versus the 700 level, as well as potentially buying on strength right here. And I did start a position on this bullish outside day. You did have a downside reversal to end the week on Friday, but it was on below average volume. But if we do get a push upwards, I really want to see that volume come in, suggesting that there's institutional support on this move up the right side of this base. Last on the list, we've got ZI, Zoom Infotech, and overall you can see great earnings, sales, margins, the most recent 4 quarters, great estimates for this year and the next, nice increase in fund ownership, and 5 high quality funds in here as well. And we had a strong move after earnings, and the daily chart is very choppy, so you might just want to use a weekly chart here. Overall, nice strong breakout on high volume, and then a pretty tight week, finishing at the highs last week. So it looks pretty good. I'll be watching to see if there's some type of consolidation here, and then basically some pivots that you can manage risk against, or potentially an undercut and reclaim of the 60 level and the 60.28 pivots. So overall, that is my watch list going into next week. Let me know your thoughts down below. Are there any stocks I missed? Let me know down below as well. And overall, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Best of luck trading next week, and I'll see you guys in future videos. Thanks.